Warriors rejoice, especially Vlad the Inhaler on YouTube, because today we are covering the greatest warrior macros that you should be using. Warrior, in my opinion, is the most fun class in the game to play, but in order to get the most out of your warrior, you're going to need a couple of macros to make your life the stuff of legend. Before we begin, it's important to download the add-on called Super Macro. You can find it linked in the description below in this video. But Super Macro essentially will help you extend the code in which you are allowed to use in your macros. It's incredibly useful for making more efficient macros and sometimes even mandatory because the code that we need is so long. I'll include an example website below as well with tons of warrior macros that you can practice with and develop your own. Or you can just download my macros included in the description below. Thanks, and let's get started. Okay, so in order of importance, this is, in my opinion, the most important macro you should be using as a warrior. And the reason why you need a weapon switching macro is because if you are using a two-handed weapon, or if you're using two one-handed weapons as a warrior, there are going to be times that you need to switch weapons and you need to go into defensive stance to pop your defensive abilities, okay? Shield wall is a really good example of this. If you need your shield wall and it's an emergency, you're going to need to switch weapons very fast to get that out. Additionally, you may need to switch weapons just to get your shield bash, or you may just want to switch weapons because maybe you have two different weapons that have two different functions. No matter what you do, the warrior is the master of weapons. You're going to need to be changing weapons. So let's look at what the macro is. It's /run local. PickupInventoryItem PickupContainerItem, and basically this is telling you like which slot on your character to go to, and then right here you'll see 410. What that essentially looks like is your bags. So this is your fourth bag and the 10th slot of your bag, okay? You're telling it to go to the last slot because that's where the last item that you're unequipping or changing out is going to go in this macro, okay? And again, this macro will be in the description below, but this is how it works. When you click it, I'm switching from my two-hand set to my sword and board set, or in this case, my axe and board set, okay? So here's what it looks like. Here's my bags in PFUI. So I have a 14-slot bag. You can move it to whatever slot you want by reading the function, but if you look here, that is the 10th slot in my bag, right? That my weapons are going into. You see that? And it is my fourth bag. Okay, so let's look at the macro again. You see how that lines up? Now I can change this, okay? So now as you can see, I have just changed the slots. So let's say you want to move your slot to the very last slots in your bag right here. So the 14th slot and the 13th slot. It's really important if you're just working with this macro, put your sword and board in both of the slots so you understand how it goes, because they're going to be equipped like this in your inventory, okay? You kind of want them set up because your sword is going to go here and your shield is going to go here. You want them listed like that in your bag, all right? So when you change your macro, like I just did to move it to these last slots, now let's try it. And you can see now it's working in the last slot of the macro, okay? So you can manipulate these two numbers to move it wherever you want. So let's say I want it back in my 10th slot. So I'm going to do 9 and 10, and the reason I'm doing that, like we said before, is to let the macro know where we want the weapons to go. Okay, so there you go. There it is again. So you can move it around as you see fit. So I hope that helps. That is our weapon switching macro. Okay, this next macro in order of importance is one that you're probably going to use every single minute of every day of playtime. It is your Bloodrage Macro. And this is one of the most important vanilla macros in the game because as a warrior, you need to be able to activate and cancel your blood rage, which is available to you every minute. The reason most warriors use this is because we like to get our battle shout up in between combat. This is what it looks like. It's /script local GetPlayerBuff. So it's looking basically for your blood rage buff. And then if you click the button again, it's going to cancel your blood rage. This is what it looks like, and this is how it's mostly used. You get your buff, and then you click it again and you cancel it. Really, really important to have control over this, but it's a quality of life function for you, so I hope this helps. I'm going to include this one in the description below as well. The next most important macro I think you're going to need is a warrior, and this is really just condensing your abilities so that you have more macro space and using space more intelligently. This is really important to do as a warrior, especially if you like to PvP, because condensing your important key bindings will give you more efficiency and performance. So this is your bash macro, and if you look at what it's saying, this will help explain what the macro does. So run local, basically it's looking for whichever form you're in, okay? And it's looking to see if you're in defensive stance or not. And if you are in defensive stance, it's going to cast Shield Bash, or else it's going to cast Pummel. This is your interrupt macro, very important. Essentially what this does for you is, so if I'm on Turtle WoW, you can use Pummel in battle stance as well, but if you're a classic player, you can use it in berserker stance, right? But essentially what this does is it will cast my interrupt no matter which form I'm in. So I don't need separate interrupts listed all over the place. Let me just go ahead and go show you real quick what it looks like. Okay, as you can see, I am currently in battle stance, all right? I'm going to use my macro, and it's going to cast my Pummel, right? I'll switch and I'll be in defensive stance. I'm using the same key binding, the same space on my action bar, and it now is going to cast my Shield Bash. That is what the macro does. That is what it's for. It saves your key binding space. So this is a really, really important one. I hope you like it. It's very good at saving your space. My 30-minute cooldown macro. Warrior has a bunch of abilities that are on 30-minute cooldowns. Your shield wall, your recklessness if you're in berserker stance, or your retaliation if you're in battle stance. But you'll notice they're all linked to a stance. And because of that, we can put them in this handy dandy little macro that will detect which stance that we are in, okay? And it will cast our 30-minute cooldown based on the stance that we are in. So as an example, I'll go into my defensive cooldowns. So right here I have it all in one macro button. So I'm in berserker stance, I switch, now I'm going to do my shield wall. So I click my one button and there it is. I don't have to have multiple key bindings to do that one function. This is my all-in-one emergency button, okay? That is what this macro does. It saves key binding space so that you can perform more efficiently. This one is a personal favorite, and I hope it helps you. For your warriors who are looking for a better key binding space for your Overpower ability, basically I have it set so that I cast Hamstring any other time except if I have the ability to cast Overpower, like somebody dodges me, I click here on my Hamstring instead so that I'm using a priority key binding, a very, very easy to access key binding, so that it will Overpower if they dodge me. This is very, very useful. Otherwise, it's going to cast my Hamstring. Very cool macro for you as a warrior. You can use this with other functions as well, like let's say execute. If you prefer to do this with execute, you can just type that in here and you could execute instead. But I like doing it with Overpower because Overpower isn't always active. You know what I'm saying? They have to dodge for it to happen. Whereas execute is always active if the target is under 20% health, and sometimes you want to reduce their speed instead. It works very well for me for efficiency's sake. Maybe it will help you. This is one that I think you're going to use very consistently. You're going to do it every time you pull back a target. So the macro is, if you're not in combat and the target is in front of you, you will start attacking the target in front of you. You'll engage combat without having to press anything else. So that's really important as a function to include in your macros. The next thing it's going to do is it's going to check how far you are from your target. If you're close to your target, it'll cast one ability. If you're far from your target, it casts another ability. This is what we're going to use to range pull without having to have a completely separate button that we press to throw or shoot a target to pull them back. This allows you to save a ton of space again so that you have priority key bindings. And this is usually what I keep on my #1 key. Very important. The last thing this is going to do is it's going to let everyone in my raid or my party know who I'm pulling back. It's going to mark them with a skull target so that my current target is always marked with skull. It does it automatically so that you don't need to do that as the warrior. Here's what it looks like. I'm not in a party, so you won't be able to see the raid markers, but if I'm far from a target, it will throw at the target. This will let you pull back. If I'm close to the target, it's going to let you cast your other ability of your choosing. Okay? I currently have it listed as Cleave because I like doing my key bindings like a weirdo, but you can do all kinds of things in here. You can do your Shield Slam if you're a protection warrior if you wanted. You could do Thunderclap, you could do Rend, whatever is better for you. You just type it in right here at the CastSpellByName section. One of my favorite macros by far. I use it probably more than any other macro. One of my last warrior macros here that I wanted to share, this one is also really important, is consumables. I really like having a macro, and this is the function right here. It's looking through your bags to find either a health stone or a healing potion of any kind. This is really good because if you haven't gone through your bags yet to look for a consumable, and maybe you have like a health stone and a potion in there, but you haven't put it on your bar, you don't need to worry about that anymore. You just put this macro on your action bar, as you can see right here, and it will search for your healing potions and it will find them. It will search for your health stones and it will find them in your bags. And this other function is looking for conjured items, but don't worry about that. This is the function you're looking for right here. Okay, run B equals 0, 4. Get your container info. Look for health stones, look for potions. I'm going to waste a potion as a demonstration here, but I don't have it on my action bar, as you can see. Okay, the text in the macro doesn't say major healing potion. It's just looking for healing potions. I'm going to go burn myself. There you go. You see that? No healing potion on my action bar. It is finding it for me. It is taking it for me. This is super crucial for your rogues and your warriors, for anybody really that's melee. I think it's actually crucial for all players. It's just really important to be able to look through your bags, get the consumables, and take the consumables. So this one is a huge value added in my opinion. Now I'm going to go over quality of life macros, things that will make your life easier and better. This is one that you're going to use all the time if you have any kind of sharpening stone that you like to put on your weapons. Essentially, it will look through your bags for you. It will find your sharpening stones if you list them here, and it will put them on your weapon. Okay, so you just click the button, and as you can see, I am now sharpening my axe. Okay, so it does it for you automatically. This is really cool. If you're tired of looking through your bags, you could just have a one button quality of life click, and there you go. So you can do this with other things too. You could set it up to do it with poison if you're a rogue, but really cool macro. Good quality of life added here. Now, this is probably the final thing I'm going to cover, because you can do macros for just about everything, but I'm going to talk about things that I don't think you should have macroed, things that you could macro, and finish with this last quality of life subject. So when I'm doing any kind of content, I like to have these macros that let people know quickly what I'm doing, because people tend to act very fast in raids or parties. This is one of my most used macros, and it helps me a lot when I'm tanking. If I'm ever in a tank function, I have a macro that will say in the raid what I'm doing, okay? And I have this keybound over here, all right? And basically when I pull, I say this in chat so that people know in the raid, in the party, that I'm pulling, they can prepare. So not only am I marking, as we saw earlier, the targets, so they know which target I'm pulling, I'm communicating very quickly with the press of a button without having to say anything if I don't have voice chat up that I'm doing it. You can keybind this to your pulling macro if you wanted. You can put this text inside the macro we showed you earlier, where you were pulling, you know, the target back and then cleaving. I don't recommend it though, because you may not always want to communicate. It's just good to have this very quickly listed. I also like to communicate if mana is low and we should rest. I like to communicate that to the party. This is one of the things that has come in handy for me. People will press, and they won't think about the healer. It's up to you as a tank to think about your healer. So I like to use this macro to say, hey guys, good job. We're gonna take a rest here so the healer can get mana. Very important. The next one I like to communicate is if I'm crowd controlled. Not everybody knows. They don't always have macros or add-ons. They don't know if I'm crowd controlled, so it's good to communicate that to them so they know what to expect. This is really good. It's just communication very quickly. You're going to want this keybound, because if you're crowd controlled and you don't expect it, It can really help your party to play better if they're like, oh, he's CC'd, right? The last one is just rolling. I like rolling in a macro. I like clicking a button and rolling. It also lets them know that I see a chest in the raid or the party so that they can start to roll for things as well. So those are my macros. But I just want to say, there is a multitude of things you can do. You can check for buffs, like this is one of my chamois things, but you can check for buffs. So for example, earlier in our attack macros, let's say right here, okay? You can add an extension here so that if you're not buffed with, let's say, Battle Shout, okay? You could then make it so that every time you pull back a target, it's trying to Battle Shout, or every time that you use an ability, it will try to Battle Shout first. This is good for those of you who forget to Battle Shout, or maybe you don't want to keybind your Battle Shout. You can just put a script together so that you do it. There are a lot of smart uses of these macros that you can put everywhere. But I just want to say, I don't think that you should keybind everything. I think that you should keep things as organized as you can. You'll see right here, I don't have every space taken, but I do have every ability as a warrior, okay? Just try to keybind. If you're running out of keybinding space, you know, that's when your macros are really going to come in handy to help keep you organized. Use macros as a tool to keep you organized. Don't over macro, because if you macro in a manner that, oh, I only battle charge in this certain instance of a macro, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot later. Some of your abilities should stay as just abilities. You don't need to macro them. It's just something important to say. If you guys have any questions about any macros, you can hit me up. My name is Mythix on Discord, okay? So let me know if you have any questions, if I can help you, and check in the description of this video. There's going to be a link to a bunch of useful macros that you can use for your classic, vanilla, or Turtle Wow playthroughs, okay? With that being said, I really appreciate you guys checking this video out. I plan on doing this for every class that will help players be more organized, to have better macros, add quality of life to your playthrough, and I really appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video, okay?